So it's now been 6 weeks since my last video about my Solaredge Energybank review. So in this video, I want to talk about three things. I want to give an update into further insights about the performance and operation of my Solaredge Energybank. I also want to talk about the performance of my solar panels for the month of October. And finally, I want to share with you a fault that I've discovered with one of my solar panels and what, if anything, I can do about it. Now, if you haven't watched my previous videos, my name is Anthony. I own a 9 kilowatt solar panel array up here in Aberdeenshire. You can review my previous videos where I discuss the performance of this system in extensive detail. Now, people who watched my previous video will know that I made an observation where I calculated that the efficiency of this energy bank was only 75%. Now, I reported that to Solaredge and they had also watched my video and they said that my calculation method was very interesting. But they reassured me and they told me that the efficiency of this was actually 90%. They pointed out a few flaws in my calculation method. So we're going to go into the figures and we're going to take a closer look. What I did previously was I logged power consumption over a period from one full state of charge over to the next. And in this instance, I aggregated the discharge power and the charge power together. And the amount of discharge power integrated over time would be your discharged energy, and vice versa for your charge power integrated over time. If we output this in an hourly format, you can see that we have got units of power for each hour of the day. Now, what Solar Energy has said is that these units that I am seeing here do not represent the mean power for that interval of the day. They are actually discrete values. And what that means is that if you have power being logged every single second, it's up to Solaredge what they choose. So you could choose the first value logged for a particular time interval, the last value logged for a particular time value. You could log the maximum power for a particular time interval, or indeed the minimum, or indeed a completely random discrete value. The point of the matter is that you cannot take a discrete value and use that as a typical value to integrate and get energy from. Solaredge does have that data themselves, and they were able to do that calculation for my house, and it was a 90% round trip efficiency from the inverter to the battery and back again. So the data for energy charging and discharging does exist. And very interestingly, if we have a look at the actual message that I got from them, they said there was one thing which I found quite fascinating. They said they're going to be adding an analysis tool in the future. Now, if we go back to this chart analysis, there is one other thing which I found really quite interesting. We will just remove the charged and discharged power. There is another data set called energy. Now, if I go to the beginning of time for this battery and go to today, what you see is what looks like an increasing trend. And still, it doesn't look like it makes too much sense. But what I'll do is just export it to a spreadsheet. And what you can see here is your state of energy, the time of day, and the charged energy. And what it looks like is the total energy for each hourly interval, which is half of what I need to do the actual efficiency calculation. We also need discharged energy. And it looks like you've got energy for each hour of the day, which is perfectly reasonable. But as we go down the days, you see these large numbers. I mean, you can't get 17 kilowatts in a single hour. And then you scroll down a bit more, you see 25 kilowatts, and then 40 kilowatt hours. And it occurred to me that they're actually conflating two data sets in the same data stream. You've got hourly charged energy, and then you've got total accumulated charged energy. It doesn't happen every day at the same time. So this one's at 9 o'clock. The next time is a couple of days later at 6 o'clock in the morning. And if we scroll down all the way to today, or yesterday, we see 283 kilowatt hours. So if I do a very rough calculation, we see that divide that by 1,000, assuming 100% charge discharge efficiency and no solar charging whatsoever, we see that it's returned about £93. Now, I've done a more exact calculation for October. It was about £64 returned for the month of October. So yeah, it's definitely showing its worth now. Charging up at night time and then discharging during the daytime. So how do I use my battery to gain maximum value out of it now that it's autumn and winter time? So here we've got an example where I charge my car up slowly overnight. And in the process of charging my car up, I was charging it up on the eco mode using the My Energy Zappi. We were charging up at 1.4 kilowatts. And once we got down to here, you can see that we had a state of charge which gradually reduced down to about just under 17%. This was the time when I got in the car and drove off for the whole day. And then we had a lovely sunny day, and then the battery fully charged. And this is a perfect example on how to use the battery best in the weekend. And you can see just before 12 o'clock, the battery was fully charged. And you could see you've got this red graph here. That tells me this is where the hot water controller came in. Beyond this point, the rest of this was export. And then I got back home at just before 4 o'clock, and then we got a little bit of charge in the early afternoon. For the month of October, I was able to run my domestic household loads, so everything minus my car and my hot water, all the way up until the 20th of October. So if we go to the 20th of October, you can see something else. So you can see there's a double charge overnight. So this is where I charged up my hot water tank, and this is where I charged up my battery. And this was the first time I charged my battery at night time. And you can see the rest of the daytime, it was a pretty poor day. Now, if we go further into the autumn, let's go into November, and it was Friday the 18th of November. This was the worst day that we've had. And what I did was we charged up the car early on in the cheap period. Then we charged up the hot water tank, and then we had 90 minutes of charging, and there was just so little power during the daytime from the sun. You can see here we just got up to 100 watts close to the middle of the day, and the battery was discharging the whole day. This was probably the biggest depth of discharge that I've seen during a 24-hour period. More typically, if we go to, let's go to today, for example, you can see there's a reasonable amount of input during the morning today. We still charge up overnight, and then the rest of the day, the battery holds its charge during the daytime, but then the cloud comes in the afternoon, and it's just steadily discharging into the evening time. So this is how I'm using my battery, and it's not optimal just yet, but I'm learning more and more as I advance through the winter time. Now, since my previous video, I've also made adjustments to my battery storage profiles. So we've got daily profile types, and what I've done is I've relabeled some of these battery storage profiles. And what I'll do is go into the seasonal profiles. What we've got is some more nuance in terms of what kind of typical battery profiles will have for each season. So if we go into late autumn, you can see what we've got is 30 minutes of charging. We've got 60 minutes of charging, and we can select 90 minutes of charging for the battery. The remaining 4-hour period is reserved for allowing the car to charge up. It's also reserved for allowing the hot water cylinder to be charged up. Now, which one I choose depends on what the state of charge is at the beginning of the cheap overnight period. If it's a low state of charge, below 20% or so, I want to use a longer charging up period, such as 90 minutes or 60 minutes. It also depends on what the weather for the following day is going to be. If it's a poor weather day where there's no sunshine, I want to charge up for the full 90 minutes. So far into the end of November, I'm finding 60 minutes of charging is adequate to allow for a day of mixed weather where there's sunshine for a portion of the day. The one thing that I'm still learning is that you don't get full value out of your battery unless you use the full charge cycle of it every night. So far, I've only been using 50% of this charge cycle each night. And it's worth bearing in mind that you're charging up this battery at night time on a cheap overnight rate. And that rate is cheaper than the price for LPG, especially when you consider the conversion inefficiencies of a boiler for running your central heating. So what better way is there of using that electricity than to run a couple of dehumidifiers in your house? Now, in addition to the electricity consumed ultimately being released as heat back into the room, they do something else. They condense water, and in the process they release the latent heat from that water vapor back into the room. Well, that is the amount of water that I accumulated over the last 8 hours of operation. And this is water which is being pulled out of my kitchen and the building fabric. It's worth bearing in mind that it's not just pulling moisture out of the atmosphere. There's moisture built into all of the fabric of your building, including the plasterboard and also any carpets that you may have. So that's a very useful amount of latent heat released back into the atmosphere. So it makes that cheap overnight electricity consumption even more efficient than before. Now, I recently purchased one of these. It's a hygrometer. It has a Bluetooth connection to my phone, and it means you can log data with it. And I was running a dehumidifier like this in my bedroom. And one of the things you notice is that when you switch on the dehumidifier, the humidity, as well as dropping down quite considerably initially, you get a small uptick in the temperature in the bedroom. And these things are rather interesting to have. And of course, you've got the additional advantage that by making the atmosphere inside your house drier, you're reducing the risk of condensation and you're reducing the risk of attracting mold and rot. So how well did the solar panels actually do for the month of October? So October was an excellent month. We generated 357 kilowatt hours of electricity. And if we compare that to last year, we generated 322 kilowatt hours of electricity for October, and we beat the generation for both years representing February. So going into October in more detail, we can see that the 1st of October, which I just talked about recently, it was just under 24.5 kilowatt hours of electricity. That was the best day we had. The worst day, as mentioned before, was the 20th of October, where we generated 2 kilowatt hours of electricity. Now, in terms of export, we exported 57 kilowatt hours of electricity. So that is half what we exported the year before. So the battery is really helping out here. But we are importing more electricity. That has less to do with the battery. It's got more to do with the fact that I've been at home all the way through October, whereas last year I was away from home for about a week, which meant that a large portion of my charging for my car was done away from home. So going into November, what I discovered was that one of the solar panels on my array hasn't been performing so good. On the Solaredge monitoring app, you can see the performance of each solar panel for the particular day, particular week, particular month, and also for the year as a whole. And for the year as a whole, this particular solar panel has been performing pretty well. But for the month of November, you can see it's been producing just over half of the output of its neighbouring panels. And that's a real concern. And it's not just for the whole month, it's also for the day and the week as well. Now, this can be due to a variety of factors, one of which is obstruction of the solar panel. So if it's dirty, or if you've got leaves or bird poo obstructing the solar cells, you can find that the output of the solar panel can be reduced dramatically. So what we're going to do is have a look at this solar panel in a bit more detail. So what I'm looking for here are defects to the solar panel. I'm not looking for obstructions. I can see that there are no obvious obstructions from the ground, but you can't see defects obviously. The panel was obviously dirty and it needed a good clean, but I was concerned about that dark spot in the left side of the solar panel. So the result is much better. I have missed a bit, but I've gone back up and I've cleaned it again. And you can see that there is no dark spot on the left side, so that is definitely reassuring. So following on from the cleaning, I reviewed the data for the rest of the afternoon, and we finished the cleaning around 1:30, and you can still see that the module is performing very poorly. And this continues right into the afternoon until the point where the sun no longer is significant. So I've concluded that this is indeed a faulty solar module. So what I've done is I've reported this to my installer. Now, the solar panel itself has got a 12-year product warranty, and I discussed this on my very first video for my solar panel series way back 2 years ago. Now, these are unique modules. These are what are known as smart modules. They've got an optimizer built into them. Normally, Solaredge optimizers are bought separately, but these have got it built in. So the question is going to be, do they still have these solar panels in stock anywhere? Or have we got an issue with obsolescence? So what I think is going on here is that we've got an open circuit in one of these strings. Now, these cells are all connected in series all the way up the solar panel module. So if one fails, you have you've got bypass diodes, and each section of cells can be bypassed. So you can have a string which goes from here and back to here again, and you can have a bypass diode from there to there, and likewise from there to there. So you've got 3 separate circuits which could be bypassed. And what I'm seeing is that the output from the solar panel has dropped by between half and 2/3, and that suggests that one of these strings has completely failed. So you might very well reasonably ask, why don't I replace the defective solar panel with this rather handy spare solar panel on my shed? Well, the problem with this panel is that it's too big. The panels on my roof are 1,650 millimeters wide, 996 millimeters tall. This is 1,750 millimeters wide, so it's over 100 millimeters longer, and it's 50 millimeters wider. So it goes to show there is no such thing as a standard sized solar panel. Now you could then ask the question, why don't you just stick it in the corner of the solar panel array? Well, there's another problem. The mounting adapters, the in-roof mounting adapters, have a very tight tolerance on the width. It's 5 millimeters of tolerance. So you can't fit a smaller panel there, you can't fit a bigger panel there, even in the corner. Now, if you had a rack-mounted panel array, you could indeed substitute the corner panel with your faulty panel and then put something like this in its place. It will look a bit awkward, but it would work. I think what this demonstrates is that if you do have a solar panel array commissioned, maybe you should procure one spare panel in anticipation that maybe you'll get at least one panel going faulty that needs replacement. So my best hope is that they've got a spare one of these solar panels sitting in the back of some warehouse somewhere. They're no longer advertised on JA Solar's website. And it does raise the question as to how good the 12-year product warranty actually is. There is no such thing as a standard solar panel size. They're not like doors for your car, where you can just simply go out to your builder's merchant and buy a new door and you can be sure it can fit in the same door frame. These solar panels on JA Solar websites, the smallest one is 30 millimeters wider than these ones. It simply wouldn't fit. So all I can do is see how this warranty claim is going to pan out. But one solar panel going faulty is not my biggest worry. My biggest worry is that more of these solar panels become faulty in the years and months to come. If that does indeed turn out to be the case, then I've got a much bigger nightmare on my hands. Now, one thing I will say about a 12-year product warranty is that it is an extraordinarily long time to have a product warranty for. The only product warranties you'll see which are of that kind of length are warranties for brand new houses. Cars, for example, this has got a 4-year warranty on all the components, but most car manufacturers only have a 3-year warranty. Electronic products typically only have a 2-year warranty. There's going to be some interesting outcomes from it. I think there's probably going to be a whole series about how these solar panels fare in the months and years to come. I think the honeymoon period is over now. But one of the things I will say is that the Solaredge system is absolutely fantastic in being able to report this defect in the first place. Now, if you had a standard solar panel string array without any Solaredge optimizers, you wouldn't discover this defect with one panel. You'd have to have quite a few panels defective before you'd actually discover that there was a problem with your solar panel system as a whole. So in that regards, the Solaredge system is excellent in being able to diagnose problems early on. So in my next video, I want to bring up the topic of thermal cameras. I got one of these, and I'd like to thank you all for enabling me to buy one of these. I bought this with the referral codes that everybody's been using for signing up to Octopus Energy. This is a Klein Tools thermal camera. It cost me about £350, and I've decided to use the referral money to invest in more interesting YouTube content. So I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you again very soon.